afternoon, everybody. I'm welcoming you to today's event on Tai Ji Men case. The event is organized by CHESNUR, the Center for Studies of New Religion and Human Rights Without Frontiers. So my name is Rosita Shorita. I'm the representative of the European Federation for Freedom of Belief, which is international network of scholars, activists, and lawyers advocating for religious freedom. So for those who are not yet familiar with the Tai Ji Men case, we have distributed a very nice article in a very nice newspaper, the European Times. So you can inquire and read more and get more information about the Tai Ji Men case. That perhaps there will be aspects that will not be discussed today. But today we have an extensive program. So the event will be, we can say, organized in three parts. The first part, I will have the speakers with me on the podium already. Then it will be the second part chaired by Thierry Val, who will introduce the participants of Tai Ji Men. And the third part, it will be by Willy Fautré, who will wrap up and make the conclusions of our event. So just a very small introduction, because the participants will discuss more in detail about the Tai Ji Men case. So I would like just to say that first of all, the Tai Ji Men is a spiritual group, spiritual movement from Taiwan, which is rooted in esoteric Taoism, but at the same time, it's open to people to all religions. It teaches Qigong, self-cultivation, and martial arts, and is also well known for its international cultural activities, promoting peace, education, and the centrality of conscience. The problems that this spiritual movement is having is politically motivated crackdown, which happened in the year of 1996. And the main reason for this, it was the internal political Taiwanese problems, where the very often religious and spiritual groups were accused of not having supported the ruling party in the presidential elections, and afterwards they were persecuted. There was a specific court case, and the Tai Ji Men leader and members who have been arrested were declared innocent of all charges. However, as a byproduct of the case, the National Taxation Bureau continued to issue the tax bills for an alleged tax evasion, although the Supreme Court of Taiwan had clarified that there have been no tax evasion. So, and even after 25 years of legal battles, the tax office still refused to withdraw one of the ill-founded tax bills, the one concerning the year of 1992. So, and in 2020, based on the 1992 tax bill, land of Tai Ji Men, which they regard as sacred and intended for a spiritual center, was seized, auctioned off unsuccessfully, and confiscated. Hence the protests that continue to this day and have gathered significant international support. Yesterday, as we know, was the World Press Freedom Day. And in the Tai Ji Men case, it's the biggest perhaps negative role that has been played in all the troubles that they are still facing today, was the bad press, as we call it. So, and we gathered today is exactly to try to have an objective analysis and the facts that may help Tai Ji Men to finally somehow find a solution for the injustice that they are the victim. So our seminar is hybrid, with some participants who will be connected via Zoom, and fortunately, quite a few of us, we are here present. For those who are interested to learn more, there is a new website created by Tai Ji Men, and the title of the website is taijimencase.org. So now I invite the speakers to take the floor, and the first speaker is Massimo Trovigna, who is Italian sociologist who serves as managing director of Cesno, and he is editor-in-chief of the magazine Bitter Winter, a daily magazine on religious liberty and human rights that has covered extensively the Tai Ji Men case so far. So the floor is yours.
Now, World Press Freedom Day this year is very timely because it celebrates the brave journalists who risk their freedom and sometimes their life to tell the truth about injustice and sometimes about war. And sadly, we have already seen several examples of reporters who died in Ukraine covering the war. However, there is also a dark side of press freedom. Some reporters are not free because they are put in jail or even killed, but some reporters are psychologically not free because they are corrupt or because ideology leads them to spread fake news. And again, if we look at the war in Ukraine, we see that there are kind of embedded journalists with Russia telling fake news to justify the aggression. But that does not only happen during wars. In 2016, two well-known scholars of new religious movements, Susan Palmer, who has participated in some of our webinars about Tai Ji Men, and Stuart Wright, wrote an important book published by Oxford University Press. It's probably the most authoritative academic press in the world, called Storming Zion, Government Raids on Religious Communities. And as the title says, the subject matter of this book is raids. Police arriving, arresting many, terrorizing others, in cases religious communities are targeted. And these raids, of course, are very common in non-democratic countries. For instance, as editor of Bitter Winter, I can mention here on October 4 of last year, 21, the OMON, the special Russian police, raided the private homes of Jehovah's Witnesses in Irkutsk, in Siberia, at 6 in the morning, and the case is now being presented to United Nations Human Rights Council because there were cases of women who were abused, elderly people who were badly beaten, and even cases of torture. Last week, Susan Palmer attended a webinar introducing a book by me on MISA, a Romanian group, and she said that, well, the book, and to be within a certain limit of pages. Otherwise, she could have included Eastern and Central Europe. She could have mentioned the raid on Misa and the raid on the Guru Yara Pass in the Czech Republic, which were very similar. Now, what's interesting in this book is all the raids look the same. There is a prosecutor announcing that serious crimes are probably committed by a certain religious movement, and there is a raid with disproportionate forces, a lot of guns, armored cars, sometimes the use of special forces, the forces normally used against terrorists or organized crime. These raids are more often than not in the early hour of the morning. And what is very important are two features. Number one, that these raids are not secret. Quite the contrary, the prosecutors alert the media and the camera operators, so they are already there when the police comes. And the second, that almost in all cases, these raids don't find anything or anything significant for a criminal prosecution. One can say in the case of Misa and Guru Yara, in the end, the leaders were incriminated for sexual abuse, right or wrong, but the sexual abuse was not connected with what they found in the raids. So the raids were totally not useful. And you don't have to take my word for that, because in the case of the Misa raid, in 2016, the European Court of Human Rights sentenced Romania to pay damages to those who had been in the raid, saying the police had behaved violently and the organization of this raid with the special forces and the guns was totally disproportionate compared with what they might have hoped to find. Again, in my book on Misa, I compared these raids to theater, saying they are not really, they don't have a police aim. They are totally non-useful for police, but they have the same function of the Baroque theater. You know, some people don't like the Baroque theater. They prefer Renaissance because in the Baroque theater, people should scream a lot and cry a lot. And Baroque theater was organized mostly by the Catholic Church to tell how bad were the heretics and how good were the Catholic priests. So you should be moved by people screaming, kicking, and these raids have exactly the same function. They should show the public opinion that prosecutors are good and cults are bad. That's the function of this raid. Now, when a prosecutor, we already heard his name, even the puppets know him in Taiwan, prosecutor Ho Kuan-yen organized the raid in 96 against Tai Ji Men, and in fact there were other raids against other movements. He followed exactly the same model. I don't know whether prosecutor who knew about the cases abroad, but he didn't need to, because in Taiwan, during the martial law period, there had been similar raids against religious movements, particularly against a Pentecostal church, which was again accused of opposing the government, called the New Testament Church. And the New Testament Church, aka the Mount Zion community, was raided twice, in 74, and when they reorganized, were raided again in 85. In 85, the raid was so violent that actually some members were killed by the police on the spot, which led to the intervention of the United States. were these Taiwanese Pentecostals and co-religionists, and that was the end of the case, because the United States said should not do this, and so they stopped. So again, these raids in Taiwan are very similar to the raids studied by Palmer and Wright in other countries. And it's, again, the Baroque theater model, where the prosecutor and police wants to teach the public opinion that the state, which is all-powerful, has decided that some groups should not exist. But now I want, in conclusion, to come back to the War Press Freedom Day, because these raids can only be successful in their theater function because of the media. Imagine if these raids are done with no media, no picture, no videos, no TV, nobody notices them. And since they don't find anything useful for the prosecution, they are a big waste of taxpayers' resources. So they only work because there are the cameramen there. There are the journalists there, and they immediately broadcast bad cult has been raided by good prosecutor. And again, in the Tai Ji Men case, the role of the media was capital. There were more than 400 articles about the raid against Tai Ji Men in Taiwan, which is not the United States. It's a comparatively small country. 400 articles, all showing this raid, and with prosecutor who continuously feeding the media strange stories, like that Dr. Hong, the leader of Tai Ji Men, was raising goblins, totally foreign to their theology, and to call raising goblins a crime in the 20th century, it's also somewhat a little bit strange. Of course, there is a difference between raids in Russia and raids in Taiwan, because at the end of the day, Taiwan is a democratic country. So in democratic countries, it may be difficult, but after the raid, there is a court case. There is a judge, and the judge can decide that those who organized the raid were wrong, and the religious movement or spiritual movement was right. That's what happened in Taiwan. There was a court case. It took time, but Tai Ji Men were declared innocent of all charges. Those who had been arrested during and immediately after the raid even received a check, which in Taiwan is called national compensation for having been mistreated and unjustly arrested during the raid. So the difference with totalitarian countries is in democratic countries there are judges. Judges may make mistakes, but in this case and in other, they took the right decision. But of course, the media, there is some inertia in this. The media continued to badmouth Tai Ji Men. They had taken the habit, and it's with the drug. When you like telling lurid stories, then you don't stop. And the further slander by the media contributed to feed the propaganda of the tax office. The National Taxation Bureau wanted to take some money out of the Tai Ji Men and continued to harass them through taxes. So these media were not innocent. After particularly the court decision, these media, these journalists, they were not just the victim of a good faith misunderstanding. They were corrupted people. I don't know if they took money from the prosecutor or the tax office, but even if they didn't take money, they were ideologically corrupted. They are kind of journalists selling their soul to the devil for a sensational story, even if the sensational story is false. So we celebrate the World Press Freedom Day, and we should tell the journalists that we can defend their freedom, but what we cannot do is to defend them against themselves. Thank you.
My second speaker on the list is Marco Respinti. Marco is an Italian journalist and director in charge of Bitter Winter, and he will speak to us via Zoom. The floor is yours, Marco.
Yes, thank you, Rosita. Hello, everyone. It is my privilege to present today in such this important place for freedom of the press in the heart of Europe, even if virtually from afar, and I will do it, recalling an American lesson which is important for the entire world and approaches our matter today, abusive taxation and denial of justice in Taiwan, from another angle. U.S. Senator Orrin Hatch passed away on April the 23rd this year, 1 month after having turned 88. For those familiar with U.S. politics, Senator Hatch incarnated the Congress itself. He seems to have been there ever since and destined to be there forever. When he retired from Congress in 2019, after 42 years in office, he was the longest serving U.S. Senator from the Republican Party in the history of the Senate. Now that he's gone from this earth, his important legacy of principled politics lives on. A son of Pennsylvania, he relocated in Utah, the Mormon state, which he represented in the federal Senate. A devout member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, an attorney turned politician, he was a conservative politician as evidenced inter alia by his stance on abortion. At least two of Senator Hatch's contributions to public politics should be celebrated today. First, his lifelong commitment to religious freedom, a constitutional principle that he held in high esteem and never betrayed. Hatch's conservative persuasions led him to share the position of those constitutional conservatives for whom, on the one hand, to be an American and proud of it means to be a standard bearer of religious freedom as enshrined in the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, and on the other hand, to regard the defense of religious liberty as an unalienable, distinctive trait of a true loyal American patriot. Senator Hatch's devotion to religious liberty was, of course, motivated by his legitimate will to defend his church's prerogatives, but it was always exerted to the benefit of all confessions and religious persuasions. His second contribution was his leadership in the fight to hold the U.S. Internal Revenue Service, or IRS, accountable after the IRS bureaucrats leaked information about donors to nonprofit advocacy groups. This caused embarrassment to many of those donors, especially when the cause they supported was delicate or controversial, and thus resulted into economic damage for the advocacy organization. Hatch understood that these leaks did not happen by coincidence and were an attempt by some tax bureaucrats to damage certain movements for ideological or political reasons. The senator reminded the IRS that nobody, not even a powerful tax agency, is above the law. As attorney Cleta Mitchell, a partner in the Washington, D.C. office of Foley and Lardner, who represented many of the advocacy and activist groups targeted by the IRS, noted in November 2014 in the Wall Street Journal, quote, Congress should rein in the Internal Revenue Service. Bringing the IRS to heel, Mitchell explained, quote, can start with reorganizing and expanding congressional investigation and holding accountable those responsible for the targeting and other abuses. At that time, in November 2014, right after midterm elections gave the Republican Party control of both houses of the Congress, among the top investigative priorities of the American Parliament were, according to Mitchell, the ideologically based tax audits performed, possibly illegally, by certain IRS bureaucrats, and, quote, the IRS seizure of taxpayer assets and bank accounts without due process, as well as the illegal disclosure of confidential taxpayer information to the media, to other federal agencies, and to state and local partisan political officials, end of quote. I quote this article because it shows that the tendency by some tax bureaucrats to act illegally for ideological reasons is not a Taiwanese problem only. In the United States, as it happened in Taiwan, thanks to Tai Ji Men, citizens mobilized for tax reform. Senator Hatch was one of their staunchest supporters. One of the most active and effective advocacy groups in America is called Americans for Tax Reform, an organization based in Washington, D.C. It has partners in the whole world and has cooperated with Senator Hatch and like-minded members of the Congress. Led by Grover Norquist, it was remotely inspired by President Ronald Reagan, who in 1981 was the author of the largest tax cuts in U.S. history and did much to contain the intrusive power of the tax agencies. Senator Hatch's two main interests, tax reform and religious liberty, eventually came to meet. He was well aware that the IRS abuses often targeted religious and spiritual movements or religiously motivated advocacy groups, which for whatever reason some tax bureaucrats did not like. Americans for Tax Reform are well aware of the Tai Ji Men situation in Taiwan, also because I alerted them myself to the importance of the case. There is much that can inspire Tai Ji Men and their friends in the political career of Senator Hatch, especially when it comes to present the Tai Ji Men case to American audiences. The first point is that there is a sort of inertia, as Italian economist Piermarco Ferraresi once called it, when discussing the Tai Ji Men case, which leads tax bureaucrats who have made mistakes or even have acted in bad faith to continue on the same path unless somebody stops them. Senator Hatch understood it and acted decisively, together with other activists and lawmakers, to rein the IRS in after it had abused its power. And this is an important lesson for Taiwan. Second, Senator Hatch taught us that an abusive tax system is particularly dangerous for freedom of religion or belief. Religious and spiritual movements are vulnerable, and ideologically motivated bureaucrats can do much damage to them. Tax reform and the defense of freedom of religion or belief are inseparable. This was the good battle of Senator Orrin Hatch. The best way of remembering him is to apply his lesson to all cases in the whole world where tax abuses become a tool to deny freedom of religion or belief. It is what is happening today in the Tai Ji Men case. Thank you.
Rival, that he is from the EcoStock accredited NGO, which is called Coordination des Associations et des Particuliers pour la Liberté de Conscience. So the podium is yours.
Thank you. I'm honored to present the following panel of Tai Ji Men dizi from around the world. They will share with us their testimonies on the issue of this unjust discrimination that they have suffered for 25 years. Before listening to them, we will watch a short video ringing the peace bells by 3 presidents.
Without love and peace, however long a culture is, it is difficult to continue under the flames of war. Without human rights, it is even more impossible to realize a world of love and peace. The bell of world peace and love holds the key that unlocks the conscience in you and me. The bell has been spreading the positive energy of love and peace throughout Europe since 2005. It has also exerted major influences on important international occasions. The cultural exchanges, which are driven by love, can unite the hearts of the world. The message of love and peace can soothe the pain in people's hearts.
We, politicians, we, responsible leaders of countries in this world, if we can try everything in order to make our children smiling.
In July 2003, a military coup took place in Sao Tome and Principe. President Rodrigo de Menezes decided to show forgiveness and tolerance towards the rebels, thus fulfilling the pledge he made when he rang the bell.
Senegal, its people, its government and president launch a call to all women and men of the world to build and consolidate peace in the world.
President of Senegal, His Excellency Abdoulaye Wade, turned the wish he made when he rang the bell into actions by calling for unity and peace in the African region. In March 2008, President Wade coordinated and successfully promoted the signing of a peace agreement between the heads of state of Sudan and Chad, ending a 5-year war between the two neighboring countries and saving countless lives.
I wish that people from all over the world can understand and respect each other, and that love and peace prevails.
In March 2008, President of the Dominican Republic, His Excellency Leonel Fernandez, used wisdom and action to actively mediate the disputes among 3 countries in South America. He successfully resolved the crisis of war and preserved the happiness in countless families.
For me, it's been a great experience. Having a World Summit for Love and Peace, this is what the world needs. So I want to commend you, and I want to somehow show you my support and the support of the Dominican people, because what you are projecting, what you are disseminating around the world is really what the world needs. So instead of violence, instead of hatred, instead of exclusion, I think we should embrace each other as brothers and sisters.
This academy sends a very strong message out there to many people in the world. The message that peace, love.
We try to support all peaceful causes around the world. That is why we really appreciate this ceremony, because it has to do with the most important values that my country has embraced.
Just like the declaration engraved on the bell, Love of the World, a declaration of peace suggests, the bell has traveled across every populated continent to spread its peaceful sound, to heal the pain and soothe the souls of those who desire peace, and inspire them to return to a world free of sorrow, fear, war, and suffering.
Our second witness is Mrs. Joanne Day, educator Tai Ji Men dizi. Mrs. Joanne Day, the floor is yours.
Hello, dear moderator, distinguished guest, and honored viewer. My name is Joanne, and I'm honored to participate in such meaningful forum. I'm an educator currently engaged in literary education promotion, and I also work part-time as an English teacher in high school. Today, I would like to share with you my journey of participating in tax reform from the perspective of a volunteer at Tai Ji Men dizi. I am 26 years old, and the Tai Ji Men case happened when I was only 1 year old. That is to say how old I am and how long this case has happened. The first time I remember participating in tax reform activity was when I was in 6th grade. In the winter of the December of the year, my mother held my hand carrying several black balloons and followed a large number of brothers and sisters on the street. Actually, I did not understand anything at the time. I did not know why the adults were crying, did not understand the sadness on their faces. Only knew that black balloons in my hands were very light and fun, and a brother who usually practiced Qigong with me, dressed up as our father of nation, was very interesting. And this was my initial impression of how fun the protest was. And I even secretly felt that I would like to experience this lively atmosphere every year. However, as I grew up, I realized that the last thing I wanted to hear was what the host of the protest who stand on the stage in front of the presidential palace and yelling, "We will be back next year." Actually, at the time, I did not know that the next year would be the year after year for decades. After living the ignorant childhood stage, I was actively involved in the first line of tax reform in high school and college, including news interviews, promotion of Taxpayer Rights Protection Act campaign, speaking to people on the streets with other volunteers about tax abuse cases, and holding tax lectures at universities. The general public and students assume that the country's tax system is perfect, but not until we explained to them did I know that there are still so many cases of tax abuse. To be honest, I have to say, it's not really easy to take the road of tax reform. In the participation of more than 10 years, I have to admit that I feel frustrated sometimes, actually many times, and even have been tempted to give up, especially when I saw the unreasonable tax officials telling lies without any hesitation, when I hear the official cliches and their indifference during our sincere petitions. I often could not help but cover my face and cry on the spot. However, whenever I was wiping my tears, what I saw out of the corner of my eye were the resolute and sincere faces of our volunteers, who are bravely and loudly moving forward, fighting for justice, fairness, and truth without any fear. And that also encouraged me and helped me a lot. Insist on doing right thing is easy to say, but not easy to do. Many tax victims in Taiwan have given up on this path. In their lives, they commit suicide because of long and tedious procedure and distortion of truth from our tax bureau. And yet, we have gritted our teeth and persisted on it. We do not only insist on the truth and the pursuit of justice, but we do so for our nation and other tax victims. We don't bow to wrongdoing, otherwise we are permitting our government's unlawful behavior and encouraging the expansion of evil forces. There's a Chinese proverb that says, "Many will makes a city," which means uniting will is impregnable stronghold. There are several successful cases has been proved this proverb. In 2013, American IRS was widely condemned when the IRS targeted specific groups for extra scrutiny in their application. In response to the public outcry, the acting director of IRS resigned in the same year. In 2018 in Japan, the IRS tampered with documents, and several private groups and citizens voluntarily launched a taxpayer reform movement, causing several important finance ministry officials to step down to share their responsibility. These victories of people in this taxation and human rights cases are actually a great encouragement for us to persevere. Through the power of media and unbiased news reporting, more and more people can understand the truth and the right in tax law. Our efforts are definitely not for nothing. We have seen more and more tax victims come forward and speak out for their rights because our advocacy. We have also seen experts, scholars, and talented people from all over the world gather in solidarity, such as Honorable Ms. Massimo and a scholar we have seen today. We're also here today to continue our effort. As of February 28, 2022, the international NGO CAPLC has submitted 4 written reports to the United Nations Human Rights Council on our case, which has shown that we have attracted a great deal of global attention. We have exhausted all means, administrative, legislative, and judicial, to continuously consider and refine on efforts so that the taxation of human rights can be truly implemented, so that those who have suffered can be rehabilitated, and so that there will be no more sufferer in the future. I know the work ahead is immense, but I believe as long as we all act with conscience and defend justice courageously, collectively, we will prevail our path to freedom, justice, and democracy. Thank you so much.
Now I give the floor to Mrs. Wavan Cheng, AVP Compliance Bank UK, Tai Ji Men dizi. Mrs. Cheng, the floor is yours.
This is Annie from London, and I'm Tai Ji Men dizi. I have been working in the banking industry for more than 20 years. First of all, thank you, Terry, Massimo, Willie, Han, and Eric, my friend here, for organizing such meaningful event in this meaningful place. There are so many violations. Here, I would like to share some highlights from 4 aspects: unfair investigation, abuse and violence during detention, tax discrimination, and the police force being deployed to silence dissident voices. First, unfair investigation. In 1996, Tai Ji Men was caught in the crossfire of a political motivated crackdown on religious and spiritual movements. In December 1996, a prosecutor, Ho Kwan-ren, led a team of 100 police force to raid both Tai Ji Men Academy and several private homes of Tai Ji Men dizi. Of course, the raid only confirmed that Tai Ji Men is a law-abiding organization and does not possess any illegal drug or weapons. The use of armed forces to raid a peaceful spiritual organization was clearly disproportionate. In addition, Prosecutor Ho also brought with him several reporters and cameramen from the main media in Taiwan. The raid became a show staged by Ho, who was shouting around to show his authority for the benefit of media. This was totally opposite what is expected from the judicial system in a democratic country. Secondly, abuse and violation during detention. Prosecutor Ho arrests Dr. Ho, his wife, and the 2 Tai Ji Men dizi. They were brought to the district prosecutor office for interrogation. When the defendant refused to cooperate with the prosecutor Ho by accusing Dr. Ho, they were immediately locked up and not allowed to see anyone. During the detention period of 117 days, Prosecutor Ho only spent 29 minutes with Dr. Ho, asked him 13 questions. On another occasion, he brought in a detainee's family member as a leverage to threaten the detainee to cooperate. All such tricks violate due process. In fact, as the judge later discovered, Prosecutor Ho, when the defendant refused to tell what he expected, even fabricate the false transcript of the testimony. So, unable to find anything criminal, Prosecutor Ho cited raising gambling as the accusation. The accusation was as bizarre as it was false and totally against the rule of law and evidence science. Third, tax discrimination. Since the inception 1966, the nature of the academy has never changed, and there has been no tax issue before Prosecutor Ho's intervention. Only the 6 years, 1991 to 1996, Tai Ji Men has to face taxation issue, and totally due to Prosecutor Ho's ill-founded charge. Prosecutor Ho called in a tax officer from the National Taxation Bureau to give a false statement. Upon Ho's request, the National Taxation Bureau officer stated that Tai Ji Men is a Korean school, so it's it's a short-term educational institution. That the gift received by Dr. Ho from his disciple were tuition fee, taxable as such. And by not paying the tax, Dr. Ho and the Tai Ji Men were guilty of tax evasion. Prosecutor Ho then offered this false statement as evidence for his allegation. The National Taxation Bureau simply copied what said in the indictment and issued tax bill. When they fulfill their statutory duty of investigation to clarify the underlying tax basis, the competent authority for Korean school, the Minister of Education, clarified Tai Ji Men is not a Korean school twice in official letter, 1997, 1999 respectively, and repeat the same statement again in a public hearing in 2000, when Mr. Zhang Shenghe, the then director of National Taxation Bureau Taipei, and Mr. Yang Chonghua, the director of National Taxation Bureau Central Area, were both present in that public hearing. In fact, the NTB itself agreed that Tai Ji Men is not a Korean school during a court trial in 2004, and repeat this again in 2012 and 2013. However, the National Taxation Bureau still insists issuing illegal tax bill and never admit their mistake, profiting from a system characterized by a lack of accountability and the absence of a proper rectification mechanism. So in 2007, after more than 10 years litigation, the Supreme Court acquitted Tai Ji Men and stated that there's no fraud, no tax owed, and no violation of a taxation code. However, the Tax Bureau still refused to follow the ruling and to revoke all illegal tax bill. They maintained the bill for the year of 1992 based on a technical trick. In 2020, they even collided with the administrative enforcement agent to auction off the property of the Tai Ji Men, and which was confiscated after 2 unsuccessful auctions. So the last one I want to mention is police force being deployed to silence dissident voices. In December 2020, a group police officer arrested one of the supporters of Tai Ji Men in Zhubei area, Miss Alice Huang. She was simply standing on a roadside holding a poster, and she actually packed his bag and ready to leave. So actually, the police didn't know what on her poster, but they still arrest her by all means because they got instruction from their boss. Ms. Huang was detained and interrogated before sending to the prosecutor office in late night. And eventually she was acquitted because the prosecutor confirmed that her behavior was within the scope of freedom of speech expression. But her mental and physical health was severe impact. Mrs. Huang was a victim of the power of government agent in Taiwan. So last, any consequence? We have seen so many misconduct of the prosecutor and the National Taxation Bureau. But did they suffer any consequence? Are they being penalized or put under disciplinary actions? The Control Yuan, the inspective arm of Taiwanese government, indicate in its 2002 report 8 major violations of law by Prosecutor Ho. In 2009, Control Yuan carried out another investigation on the National Taxation Bureau in relation to their misconduct for handling Tai Ji Men case. 7 serious misconduct was discovered. However, despite the Control Yuan's thorough report, we haven't seen any director, officer, prosecutor being penalized or put under disciplinary actions. All this confirm that on the surface, Tai Ji Men case is depicted as a tax dispute. However, the underlying truth is that the government deployed various administrative tools to oppress Tai Ji Men's freedom on religion and belief and cover misconduct of its bureaucrats. At the end, well, we are not going to stop. We will continue to fight until the justice prevails. Thank you very much.
Now we will listen to Mrs. Sonia Wang, teacher, Tai Ji Men Dizi. Mrs. Sonia, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Good afternoon, dear moderator, distinguished guests, and participants watching online. I'm a high school teacher. It's an honor to share this issue with you on World Press Freedom Day. According to the report on World Press Freedom Index from Reporters Without Borders in 2021, China, North Korea, Turkmenistan, Djibouti, and Vietnam have the worst press freedom in the world. The top countries are Norway, Finland, Sweden, Denmark, and Costa Rica. In Asia, South Korea ranked 22nd, ranking first, and Taiwan ranked 43rd. However, based on the findings, the reporters mark that while Taiwanese journalism industry is less oppressed, it's easy to polarize the news environment due to the pursuit of sultry and profit. This indicates that Taiwanese media still has room for improvement in balancing reporting and monitoring power. I totally agree with this because I've experienced this myself. And now I would like to share with you how I subject to imbalanced report and injustice in my country. I'm also a Tai Ji Men dizi, and I've been practicing Qigong for over 10 years. Prior to that, I was diagnosed with cancer at the age of 29. 1 year later, I met my husband and had the chance to meet my mentor, Dr. Hong Daozi, my shifu, and the leader of Tai Ji Men. He told me how to live a mentally and physically healthy life. Thanks to his guidance, my post-illness follow-up has been excellent. Despite being infertile owing to my therapy, at the age of 39, I miraculously conceived and gave birth to a healthy child. Now I'm 44, so my gratitude to Shifu is beyond description. With his guidance, I realized that aside from self-cultivation, my life becomes more meaningful when I can help more people in the globe. As a witness along the way, my shifu led his dizi and dedicated himself to the country and the globe without asking for anything in return. However, it's incredible to see that owing to the country's injustice and rulers' bias mentality, he was tormented for more than a quarter century. Although I was not at ease when the incident happened, I am saddened every time I see misleading claims and papers that smear shifu and Tai Ji Men. Apart from my wish for justice, I also hope that the media can speak up for human rights. Use the truth to awaken people's ability to oversee our government. Use the truth to educate the public about human rights, and use the truth to hold abusers accountable. As UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres once said, a light that shines on violations that perpetrators would prefer to remain hidden. A light that reveals the path toward peace, justice, and reparation for victims, and compels countries to meet their obligations under international law. Unfortunately, even though a case of major human rights violations like Tai Ji Men has been delayed to this day, it has rarely seen paid attention and reported by the media. If the data shows that Taiwan ranks 43rd in terms of freedom of the press, the Taiwanese media should fulfill the duty conferred by freedom of the press, guard the people, and disclose the truth, so as to improve democratic literacy and strengthen democratic politics. I'm a high school teacher, and I emphasize the concept of rules and altruism in my teaching because I'm convinced that they are the foundations for sustaining peace and stability, and the lawbreakers will be severely punished. I never imagined that the government, which was supposed to protect the people's rights and interests, would become the party that knew the law and violated it. As I witnessed all these criminal behaviors unfolded one after the other, I was confronted with paradoxes teaching students. While teaching students to obey the law on one hand, I witnessed the country utilizing the law to persecute a law-abiding and patriotic group on the other hand. This made me feel very heavy. And this type of living environment, I believe, is not what we expect to see. I believe that besides the memorable significance, the day reminds us the role we should play in realizing the truth and pursuing justice. As my mentor, the Vice Chairman of the United Nations NGO World Citizens Federation, Dr. Hong Daozi once said, truth, reconciliation, and accountability are important safeguards to prevent the recurrence of human rights violations. Restoring the truth is merely the minimum threshold for maintaining dignity. Only when redress is provided to victims and perpetrators are willing to admit their mistakes, atone for their crimes, or are punished, and justice is served, can regrets be mended, and even hatred be resolved, leading to a more stable and sustainable society. This insightful statement encourages us to speak out, as Dr. Hong suggests that people's refusal to remain silent is the source of justice and a crucial step to promote social harmony and world stability. Thank you.
Now I give the floor to Mr. Ajong Tsang, VP Recruitment Agency, Tai Ji Men dizi. The floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. I am a live streamer. I am honored to be here to participate in the forum of the United Nations World Press Freedom Day. Article 19 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights clearly states that everyone has the right of expression, which means freedom of speech, freedom of delivering and receiving information. The media in Taiwan is heavily influenced by political and commercial interests and lacks independence. It is often turned to a political tool to cover up facts and truths and control people's freedom of thought. This is absolutely a negative impact on the development of freedom, democracy, and human rights in Taiwan. The Bible says, all have sinned. This shows that human nature is imperfect, and therefore, we are born sinners. Especially media people, for political interests or specific purposes, it is easy to violate the moral conscience, although they cannot help themselves. but as media people should play the spirit of the media must be brave to face the truth in fair reporting. Therefore, our team created a media public service channel on the social platform to share the truth of injustice with the people, hoping to help the disadvantaged group to speak out. Citizens of the world are one family. Everyone is for me, and I am for everyone, with conscience as the foundation, doing more good deeds with a sense of atonement, and making up for mistakes with good deeds. In the forum held by the organizer, the examples and discussions of domestic and foreign experts and scholars are the goals of our team's study. Especially as a media worker, we should continue to learn and improve our ability to distinguish true, false, good, bad, right, and wrong. We hope we can help the world raise awareness of human dignity and human rights. Thanks again. Here I am taking 3 cases to exemplify how the government used the media to persecute people and violate human rights for their specific purposes. First, in order to impose a traffic fine of NT $18,000, about US $600, the Administrative Enforcement Agency auctioned off the house of the traffic violators, valued at NT $2.5 million, about US $83,000, in which 3 generations of family was living. The owner did not even know until he got the notification of the auction. After the help from Professor Chen Hailong, chairman of the Taiwanese Economic and Criminal Law Research Association, and a group of volunteers took the initiative to investigate, then the auction was called off and the house was saved. The investigation found that the Administrative Enforcement Agency did not follow the procedures set by the auction law to affix a seal on the house and waited for an objection to appeal. Instead of reflecting on the improper implementation process and violating the principle of proportionality, the Executive Office allowed the then Deputy Director Chen Yingjin to hold a press conference, using the tactic of squid splashing ink to smear the people involved as unruly people, and using the media to induce public opinion, and then produced a photo of a seal to illustrate that everything was administered according to the law. It was later found out the photo was backdated because the seal should have been imposed in year 2018, but there was an air conditioner in the photo which was installed in year 2019. The photo speaks the truth. However, for the violation of the law by the officials of the agency, it must wait for the sentence by judicial conscience. Second, the criminal procedure law stipulates investigate and keep it private. In the Tai Ji Men case, prosecutor Ho Kwan Ren continued to provide false information to the media during the investigation, resulting in more than 400 text reports and 70 false reports on 12 TV stations. The misreporting has created a negative perception in the public opinion that judgments are made before trial. Even Ho Kwan Ren went on TV to talk about the case openly, which seriously violated the basic human rights of not making the investigation public and persecuting the master and disciples of Tai Ji Men. The Supervisory Yuan also took the initiative to investigate and found that Ho Kwan Ren had committed 8 major violations in the investigation of the Tai Ji Men case, including the violation of the rule of non-disclosure of investigation. However, the Ministry of Justice did not punish him and even allowed him to be promoted one after another. This proves that this is a case of the state's public power using the media to maliciously harm the people. As a result of the unfair media coverage, the reputation and livelihood of the Tai Ji Men master and his wife and tens of thousands of disciples have been severely persecuted by the public authorities for over 25 years. Third, the incident that happened on September 19, 2020 in Zhubei, Hsinchu, in which a volunteer Ms. Huang was arrested by the police for no reason and in violation of the law. The day after the incident, the former chief of the Hsinchu County Police Department's Zhubei branch, Si Boxian, held a press conference and used police website, Facebook and Line social media platforms to publish false information to smear volunteer Ms. Huang. After the incident, Hsinchu County Police Chief Huang Jiakai, Branch Chief Xia Boxian of Zhubei Branch, Chief Ya Rairan of Jia Police Station, and Deputy Chief Cai Ding Hong were transferred out of their previous positions. The new Director of Bureau, Mr. Wu Jingtian, has responded to several public representatives' questions about police abuse of power, failure to investigate in accordance with their authority, and pretending to be deaf and dumb about the police's actions. This is the misfortune of the country and the people, and it is a conscienceless behavior. Martial law was imposed in Taiwan in 1949 and was lifted in 1987. The 3 cases mentioned above are from 1996 to 2020. That is to say, from the time of martial law to the time of its lifting, it has remained the same since then. Those in power have used the media to grasp the public's consciousness, perpetuate the legacy of authoritarianism, suppress freedom of the press, and become an evil force that covers up the truth, harbors lawlessness, and violates human rights. In front of law enforcement officials, although the people are the masters, they are in fact the weakest. Government officials did not take the initiative to investigate wrongdoings in accordance with their powers, to seek justice for the people, and to vindicate wrongful and false cases. Among them, prosecutors from the Ministry of Justice and officials from the Ministry of Finance and the National Taxation Bureau used false evidence and false witnesses to levy tax cases against Tai Ji Men, and even the Administrative Enforcement Administration illegally auctioned off the reserved sacred land for the Tai Ji Men practice site. Cold-blooded officials do nothing to guarantee human rights and solve problems. Recently, the International Review Committee of the International Covenants on Human Rights is preparing to come to Taiwan for the 3rd review. In the above-mentioned cases, it is not seen that the law and law enforcement officials protect the people, which is a violation of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the 2 international covenants, and the rights of the people guaranteed by the Constitution and laws. When I was reporting, the media friends I made were also messengers of justice, like some live broadcasters, and there were countless others who helped forward, share, like, and leave messages, to encourage more people to speak up bravely and do righteous reports with conscience. We call on the media to wake up, report the truth, respect the people's right to know, and perform the function of the 4th power, to urge the government to reform and realize human rights protection. Thank you all.
We are coming at the end of this very rich webinar in terms of content. And just to remind, to recall that yesterday, it was said several times, it was the World Freedom of Expression or the Media Freedom Day. And lots of initiatives were taken a bit everywhere to celebrate this day. The zero press freedom in Russia to report about the invasion and the war in Ukraine shows how important it is to support bloggers, journalists, and media outlets. Indeed, when freedom of expression is muzzled, there is a vacuum that a dictator can easily fill in with his propaganda to be accepted as being the truth. In fact, his truth. Brave journalists risk their liberty and even their life to report freely and independently. But there are also so-called journalists who willingly contribute to spread fake news because of monetary or ideologically corruption, said Massimo Introvigne. This is the case in the dictatorial regime of Vladimir Putin, but it is also the case in democratic countries like France, Germany, Italy, and even the US, where peaceful and law-abiding religious and spiritual minorities have been raided by state-armed forces with tragic consequences. In such countries, police forces or magistrates have unofficially told media people about their unannounced upcoming crackdown on religious groups so that they send reporters and camera operators. This is what also happened to Tai Ji Men in Taiwan in 1996, when prosecutor Hu perpetuated this illegal practice, an unethical practice. As a result, Tai Ji Men, its leaders and its members were demonized by media people whose biased, shocking storytelling was just meant to increase the sale of their newspapers, but indirectly, they also served the interests of the state, which wanted to stigmatize Tai Ji Men and find some sort of public justification of its operation. As a conclusion of his presentation, Massimo Introvigne said, as we celebrate the World Press Freedom Day, we should tell journalists that we are here to defend them, to defend their freedom, but we cannot defend them against themselves. Marco Respinti paid a vibrant tribute to US Senator Orrin Hatch, who passed away 2 weeks ago at the age of 88. His two main interests were the fight for religious freedom and against abuses of the tax administrations targeting religious or spiritual movements. Senator Hatch was well aware that leaks from state officials to the media did not happen by coincidence, but were an attempt by some tax bureaucrats to damage certain movements for ideological or political reasons. He recalled the International Revenue Service, the so-called IRS, that nobody, even a powerful tax agency, is above the law. In his mind, tax reform and defense of freedom of religion or belief are inseparable. The testimonies of the dizi, disciples of Tai Ji Men, are always very precious for the debate in our webinars because they come from the heart, from their own personal experience. Susan Liu, an international hotel staff, stressed that a prosecutor who violated the investigation's non-disclosure rule and continued to leak biased news to the media with more than 400 sensational serial reports, an average of 3-4 per day during the investigation period, and more than 70 broadcasts by 12 TV stations, creating a negative image and perception of this case, Tai Ji Men case, by public opinion. The TV news and print media reports have caused anxiety in Taiwanese society as well as great harm to their shifu and the Tai Ji Men disease. The media at that time did not verify the news about Tai Ji Men, nor did they make balanced reports, she said. They just reported whatever information the prosecutors gave them without checking it. This is not ethical journalism, she said. Joanne Dai, an educator, recalled that 4 reports on the Tai Ji Men case had been submitted by a French NGO, CAP, Conscience and Liberty, to the United Nations, warning that taxes are often used and misused as a weapon of discrimination against minority religions and spiritual groups. This has become a global issue and one that the human rights community should be aware of, she said. Yawen Chen then focused on the breaches of the laws by Prosecutor Hu and the National Tax Bureau of Taiwan committed, which were officially identified. The Control Yuan, the inspection arm of Taiwan's government, indicated in its report in 2002 8 major violations of the law by Prosecutor Hu. In 2009, the Control Yuan carried out another investigation on the National Taxation Bureau in relation to their misconducts for handling the Tai Ji Men case. 7 instances of serious misconduct were found. Despite these thorough reports, no directors, no officer, no prosecutor was penalized by any disciplinary actions. Sonia Wang, a senior high school teacher, said that according to the report on World Press Freedom Index from Reporters Without Borders in 2021, China, North Korea, Turkmenistan, Djibouti, and Vietnam have the worst press freedom in the world. The top countries, so the best countries, are Norway, Finland, Sweden, Denmark, and Costa Rica. In Asia, South Korea ranked 42, ranking first, and Taiwan ranked 43. While Taiwan's journalism industry is less oppressed, she said it is easy to polarize the news environment for profit, just for profit. This indicates that the Taiwanese media still has room for improvement in balancing reporting and monitoring power, she concluded. Ajong Seng, that we have just heard, a live streamer, stressed that the Taiwanese media is greatly influenced by political and commercial interests. Many editors and media reports lack independent thinking and are often moved by political purposes. As a result, facts and truths are covered up and the views of the public are manipulated by the media. This has quite a negative impact on freedom, democracy, and human rights in Taiwan. To thwart this trend in the Taiwanese media, Ajong Cheng created with others a media public service channel on a social platform to debunk the fake news about Tai Ji Men and publish the true facts. This was a summary of the various presentations made during this webinar about abusive taxation and denial of justice in the case of Tai Ji Men in Taiwan. Thank you very much for your attention, and we will now have to conclude one or two videos.
Unbreakable Bonds, Episode 6. At the end of the following year, after Tai Ji Men was smeared and searched, Zhang Menren, holding a sky-high tax bill, asked a dizi who's an accountant,
"Look, what is this?"
It turns out that the NTB had solely relied on prosecutor Ho Quan-jen's false indictment and issued the first tax bill to Tai Ji Men at the end of 1997 concerning tax years 1991 to 1996. The dizi looked at the tax bill and said,
"Shifu, don't you worry. Looks like the NTB made a mistake. I'll handle it."
The red envelopes given by dizi to their shifu were gifts. They were tax-free income under Article 4, Paragraph 1. Subparagraph 17 of the Income Tax Act, which is a traditional custom. Since the establishment of Tai Ji Men Qigong Academy in 1966, there has been no tax problem. It was only a matter of resolving the misunderstanding. Unexpectedly, this simple promise caused Tai Ji Men dizi, who were accountants and lawyers, to step into the endless cycle of administrative tax relief. It has lasted for over 20 years and remained unresolved. While their dark hair has turned gray, they have never backed down. Tai Ji Men is a member of the Taipei Martial Arts Association, Taipei Taoist Association, Chinese Martial Arts Association, Chinese Qigong Association, and Taoist Association of the Republic of China. The Ministry of Finance once stated in its directive, gifts offered by believers to churches and preachers are exempt from income taxes. The Taipei Martial Arts Association, Chinese Martial Arts Association, and Chinese Qigong Association all have issued written statements, emphasizing, none of our member organizations have ever been taxed by the NTB for accepting red envelopes given by their dizi. Both the Constitution and civil law guarantee people's freedom of gifting. Although the NTB claimed that the red envelope were cram school tuition fee, the Ministry of Education, the authority of cram schools, has stated 3 times.
Tai Ji Men is not a cram school.
On October 29, 1997, the Ministry of Education stated,
Tai Ji Men does not fall in the category of cram school.
On December 24, 1999, the Ministry of Education issued a letter stating,
Tai Ji Men is not a cram school.
On December 21, 2000, during Legislative Yuan's public hearing, the Ministry of Education stated again,
Tai Ji Men is indeed not a cram school.
During the relief process, the NTB insisted on maintaining its views and refused to admit its mistakes. The dizi had no choice but to file a request for a review of the case following the law and make a complaint to the then Finance Minister and Deputy Finance Ministers. The then Deputy Finance Minister Wang Taishan and Finance Minister Yan Qingchang stated,
"Since the Tai Ji Men tax case derived from the criminal case, the tax case will be closed when the criminal case is resolved."
Deputy Minister Wang also said,
"As a Buddhist, my wife and I also offer red envelopes to our master for Chinese New Year and other significant holidays."
Again, the kind-hearted people took the government's word for it. Since the NTB issued the bill without conducting an investigation first, there were many errors. As a result, the tax bills were quickly revoked by the Ministry of Finance's PAC Petitions and Appeals Committee. However, do you know that in Taiwan, most of the tax bills revoked by the PAC Petitions and Appeals Committee would end up back in the hands of the NTB and get reissued? The revocation was just an illusion. Every time a tax bill was revoked, all that NTB did was manipulate the numbers and then issue a new one. Zhang Menren and his wife had sent letters 25 times to the NTB to inquire, how is this astronomical tax bill calculated? Where is the legal evidence for the calculation? The NTB never answered the questions, carrying a bureaucratic attitude as if to say,
"I am an official. What are you going to do?"
The Tai Ji Men tax case has been through an endless cycle of tax bill issuance, recheck, appeal, and cancellation. The taxpayers, with their property frozen and seized by the government long before the resolution, feel like being strangled and couldn't breathe. They are extremely vulnerable in the administrative relief process. To clear Tai Ji Men's name as soon as possible, more and more dizi devoted their time and joined the team to rectify the injustices. Although they were not all accountants, they were willing to study and do their best to help. Unfortunately, after Chang Xingford became the Director General of the NTB of Taipei, the situation got more dangerous. From 1998 to 2002, the PAC Petitions and Appeals Committee revoked the tax bills 5 times and each time requested the NTB to investigate the nature of the red envelopes. In 2002, the NTB conducted a random survey by request. The results showed all 206 respondents attested that their red envelopes for shifu were gifts. But the NTB of Taipei forged the survey results, lying that only 9 respondents attested that they were gifts. Later the same survey materials were transferred to the NTB of the central area, which even claimed that only 5 attested that they were gifts while 206 did. In addition, Ling Zhongyuan, who is the director of the Taipei Municipal Bureau of Internal Revenue, even generated a form, tampering with the donor as 0, which means no one. Because the NTB forged the survey results, Tai Ji Men failed in its 6th administrative appeal. The first administrative litigation in the tax dispute began in July 2003. During the administrative litigation, on August 26, 2003, the enforcement agency unexpectedly notified all financial institutions nationwide that it was to freeze and auction the property of Zhang Menren's wife. Tai Ji Men dizi were shocked to find out that the NTB had already transferred the case to the enforcement agency. In Taiwan, when the phase of administrative appeal starts, a taxpayer needs to pay 1/2 of the tax amount or provide equivalent collateral to prevent her property from being enforced by the AEA, Administrative Enforcement Agency, whether the tax bill is correct or not. But Zhang Menren and his wife's property had all been frozen by the prosecutor. There was no more property to provide as collateral. The case was therefore transferred for enforcement by the AEA. As the criminal court of the first instance was about to issue a decision, Zhang Menren and his wife made an urgent request that their property would be used as collateral if it would get unfrozen by the judge's decision. The NTB, in its letter dated August 29, 2003, agreed to Tai Ji Men's request. The AEA also agreed in its letter to postpone the enforcement to November 2003. Please note that on October 15, 2003, Tai Ji Men was informed by the court that the property was unfrozen. However, the NTB secretly issued a letter to the AEA on October 20, 2003, asking it to execute the enforcement prior to the previously agreed schedule, without notifying the party concerned. What's more outrageous is that the NTB even forged the official document by whiting out the actual date, October 20th, and backdating it to October 15th, when Tai Ji Men was informed by the court that the property was unfrozen. The party concerned was not notified until early November, and discovered that the NTB, in cooperation with the AEA, had stealthily withdrawn all the money from the bank account of Zhang Menren's wife and sold out all her stocks. Not until the judge discovered the whiteout incident during the administrative litigation did the NTB of Taipei return to her the money from the illegal withdrawal and unlawful sale of her stocks as a tax refund. The tax refund was funded through taxpayer dollars. Dear viewer, I'm sure you didn't expect that Taiwan's National Taxation Bureau would have committed so many outrageous and illegal acts, right? Under such circumstances, how should Tai Ji Men seek administrative remedy? Please watch the 7th episode of Unbreakable Bonds.
Let's illuminate our inner lights, calm our hearts and pray for the world. May heaven have mercy on its children and allow